to Tipping Spears with Hannah Becker. Today's conversation promises to be an insightful one with a remarkable guest. Whether you're joining us for the first time or you're a regular listener, we're so glad you're here. Our goal is to bring you closer to the innovative leaders and thinkers shaping our future. And today, we're thrilled to welcome Brian Russell. Brian is a recently retired colonel in the United States Marine Corps. After commissioning from North Carolina State University, he served the earliest parts of his 27-year career as an artillery officer with multiple combat deployments, including actions as a military transition team leader in Hamia, Iraq, the executive officer of Brigade Headquarters Group in Helmand Province, Afghanistan, and plans director in Bagram, Afghanistan, for a combined joint special operations task force. After giving up command of 1st Air Naval Gunfire Liaison Company at Camp Pendleton, he was selected to attend the College of Information and Cyberspace at National Defense University as the sole Marine student in the inaugural resident Cyberspace Strategy War College program. This educational opportunity earned him a set of orders to U.S. Cybercom, where he served in the Fires and Effects Division and subsequently served as the J5 Plans Director of Joint Task Force ARES. Most recently, he commanded 2nd Marine Expeditionary Force Information Group at Camp Lejeune, North Carolina, where he provided joint all-domain effects for the MEF commander, 2nd and 6th fleets, and multiple key allies and partners. He is an award-winning author and prolific speaker on the topic of information advantage in cyberspace operations, and was most recently awarded the Military Cyber Professionals Association's Order of Thor Gold Award for his contributions to increasing operational capability in the cyberspace domain. He currently works as a cyber and information warfare SME for Paraton. Welcome to Tipping Spears, Brian.
And thanks for having me on. Super excited to have a conversation with you and your audience on the podcast. Pretty exciting topic, cyber and information warfare. Love talking about them. So looking forward to getting into it.
Yeah, we appreciate you coming on. So to get things started today, can you kind of tell us where your story begins?
Yeah, I guess I'll go back to kind of my inclination for military service. Really, my two grandfathers were World War II veterans. One served in the Army, one served in the Navy. Grew up thinking it's kind of important to serve your nation in some form or capacity. And I grew up in the era of Top Gun. So I thought Navy originally, and let's go fly aircraft seemed super cool. And then I went to, as the bio said, North Carolina State University. Was dating my wife. Currently, we were dating back in college. Her dad was a Marine at the time. And so, my wife will roll her eyes when she hears this portion of the podcast, but I didn't want to take any chances, and I decided to go Marine option in the Naval ROTC program at NC State. And then, 27 years in the Marine Corps, and absolutely no regrets about that. Like you shared the bio, grew up as an artillery officer, but didn't do a lot of artillery things after 9/11. Iraq and Afghanistan was all about getting that type of mission done, which didn't require a lot of artillery per se. And so I did a lot of other things than artillery, but I'm thankful for that. Gave me a broad base experience. And then kind of late in my career, took that pivot towards cyber and information warfare, and probably largely what we'll talk about. But that's kind of what led me down that road, is just career in the Marine Corps, an opportunity to do cyber and information warfare. And we'll probably get a lot more into that during the podcast.
No, it's fascinating to kind of hear the early steps of the journey. So can you tell us a little bit about your work in information warfare?
Yeah, I think, I've learned this later in my life. The importance of relationships and opportunities really emerge through relationships. So there I was, pretty late in career, lieutenant colonel in command of an organization in the Marine Corps called Anglico, or Air Naval Gunfire Liaison Company. That's a very unique mission in the Marine Corps, but its basic job is to integrate non-Marines into the Marine Corps fire plan. So if the Marines are ever deployed with the United States Army or allies and partners, the Marine Corps has a very specific way it does fires. We have our own Air Force, as the name implies. Naval gunfire has, specific tactics, techniques, procedures to integrate all that. So when you work with allies and partners, Anglico, this very small unit, basically splices in to that other organization and gives them access to fire. So I was in command of that organization, super awesome, loving it, and got selected to go to National War College in the summer of 2015. Well, the head detail of the Marine Corps emails like all 16 of us, there's 16 Marines going to National War College for our top level school, and goes, "Hey, one of you knuckleheads is going to do this brand new cyber program." NDU started basically a cyber war college. One, that's the tone though, Hannah. It's like one of you has to do this cyber thing.
Mhm.
So I'm like, and I'm kind of interested. And so I call a friend of mine, Hank Brown. Hank, a retired lieutenant colonel, at the time had just retired, but he was the first chief of fires at United States Cyber Command. Hank has been a long-term mentor of mine. We served together in an artillery battalion, and I'm like, Hank, this opportunity has been presented to me. What do you think? And Hank goes, hang up the phone, dummy. Say yes. I don't know if you've noticed, but the cyber thing is a bit of a growth industry. You
It's a big deal.
yeah, it's huge. Um, you probably want to catch that kind of. By the way, this is 2015. And so, yeah, okay. And sounds good to me. So put my hand in the air for the Cyber War College. And that got me a follow-on assignment to United States Cyber Command to put that education to use, so to speak. And I'll tell you, Hannah, honestly, another reason was if you, as a Marine officer, if you go to War College in the National Capital Region, your follow-on assignment is the Pentagon almost guaranteed. And so cyber was a way to go to Fort Meade instead of the Pentagon, and it worked out pretty darn well. So yeah, 4 years at U.S. Cyber Command, where really kind of learned at the forward edge, leading edge about this cyber domain and the capabilities that entails.
That's fascinating. It's so interesting to hear how you well kind of seize the opportunity there. And I totally get the tone that you were describing of, you know, who's gonna volunteer to be the one person to go. Yeah. So what's like a common misconception you think people have about information warfare? So that wasn't your initial career path. You came, from kind of a different background and went into this area. So I feel like you can kind of understand misconceptions, maybe more so than someone who started out, in that field initially. Can you kind of share a little bit about kind of what people get wrong about information warfare?
Yeah, I think the biggest one is that information warfare is only for information warfare professionals.
Mhm.
I wrote an article for the Marine Corps Gazette back in early 2021 called the OIE Truce, or Operations in the Information Environment Truce. OIE is a term that's kind of fallen out of disfavor now, but the Marine Corps was using it back in the time. And it was just my way of capturing for the non-information professional, like what this thing means. But OIE Truth number 5 is everybody fights, whether you think it or not. You are a part of the cyber domain. Like, who's not on the internet nowadays?
Mhm.
Hannah? Like, you are influencing someone through your actions, inadvertently or not, or someone is trying to influence you. So I think that's the biggest misperception. Like, hey, the cyber guys and the information folks, behind this, yes, curtain sometimes it's not understood. It's behind levels of classification. But it doesn't matter. Everybody is in this environment, and you have to understand it in order to maximize what you're trying to do. Whether that's a military mission or just a, national strategic objective, or just in your personal life and trying to protect your family from the craziness that is trying to impact them. Everyone's in it. Everyone has a piece of it. I think that's the biggest misconception. Hey, just the cyber folks or information folks will deal with that. No, you have to deal with it. It's part of the modern day reality.
Yeah, I really appreciate your emphasis on that. Everybody fights in the description there. I think that's just something that so many people aren't even aware of their engagement in it. It's like, okay, well, that's just for folks, doing their thing up at Fort Meade, or locked in the Pentagon or something like that. And to your point, we've all got an internet connection and are contributing in different ways. So I really appreciate your emphasis on that. That's something that I've come across in my own career with cyber stuff, is that people are participating with no awareness whatsoever. And it snowballs. So was there a particular event or person that served as kind of a catalyst for your career?
So I think beyond Hank and that initial, like, hey, go to Cyber College, get to Cyber Command, I think the leaders I worked for at Cyber Command and the experiences I had there were really transformative for me, for one, understanding the environment, but then being able to tell you what I just shared, this other maybe misperception about the information or cyber being completely technical. Not true. There is a mix, and it's a thing I call the space between in this environment. How do you take disparate capabilities, organizations, and bring them together to achieve that end state or achieve the objective? And what I mean by that, there's a space between the technical and the cognitive in this realm.
Mhm.
And so cyber is a very technical field. There are people that are much better at it than I am, Hannah. Again, I grew up an artillery officer, came to cyber late. I don't code.
Mhm.
Here's how I describe it to people, where I have a career where I can look at a topographic map, military planning on top of, and I can like very quickly pick out, there's the key terrain, there's an avenue of approach. That's how military forces are going to align themselves. There are cyber officers and professionals that can look at a network map and do the same thing. That's a critical piece of equipment. This is the path to get to wherever in cyberspace. And so there is a technical understanding that is involved in these domains. But at the end of the day, if you go back to information warfare, and that's a contest of wills characterized by violence, the human is still important. And that's another one of my OIE truths that I stole from the soft community. Humans are in fact more important than hardware. The technical has an importance, but it's about wills and it's about intent and it's about behavior. And what I learned, just to get to the question about that kind of transformative experience of Cyber Command, the cyber effect, more often than not, was literally to introduce a behavior change in a person or an organization. So think about what happens when your internet at your home shuts down. You are probably conditioned, Hannah, to go immediately to your service provider application on your phone and go, hey, is there an outage? Or submit a trouble ticket. That is a known predictable behavior that can be exploited. And so it might not be the cyber end result of shutting off the lights or shutting off a network, but what does that induce that organization to do? And that makes them vulnerable to another military effect or portion of the force. That's the key to this domain. Technical, cognitive, how do you balance both of those things? And that's what I learned at US Cyber Command.
Yeah, that's a great description. I love your emphasis on kind of the human context, because I think far too many people think whenever, we're talking about cyber in any context, it is just coders, or it is just, cybersecurity professionals that just look at screens all day. And, you really drove home the impact of that being able to predict human behavior and that kind of the engagement on the cognitive space there into how we engage with tech in predictable ways and how we engage with each other. So that's such a wonderful description. I know every journey has its hurdles. Can you tell us kind of what some of the obstacles that you faced in your career and kind of how you overcame them?
I think it's identifying and bridging what I call the space between. I've already referenced that is like where are what are seemingly disparate organizations or intent and how do you bring that together? And again, that came out of my time at US Cyber Command, working hand in hand, side by side with the National Security Agency, who both operate in this thing called the cyber domain, but sometimes for seemingly disparate purposes. Cyber Command wants to be in a network to do the things I've described, shut it down, manipulate it. The
Mhm.
National Security Agency wants to be in a network for a different purpose,
Mhm.
collect, understand, intelligence. When Cyber Command wants to affect that network, the NSA rightfully like puts her hand and goes, hey, wait a minute. And so a lot of my time at the fort was, unfortunately to say in the early days, like after the fact, like, oh, how did that go wrong? And we figure out how to come together early and go, we can do both at the same time, or with a little bit of coordination, achieve both end states. And so, there's in Brian Russell's personal view, and again, my views are my own, not anyone I have to be associated with. I don't know how you ever, get away with that disclaimer because, I'm obviously a product of my experiences, but there's a reason there's one person in charge of both Cyber Command and National Security Agency, and it's to bridge that space between. And so that is a challenge, but within the challenge is always opportunity. So it's like how to identify and then bridge that space between. And I even took that down to the MEF information group. I think that's part of, probably a lot of reasons maybe I was selected to go do that. But The MEF Information Group is a longstanding organization that has a different kind of role and mission. What I mean by that is it's five different battalions that are seemingly have like unique missions. And let me just describe it real quickly. But there's a communications battalion which sets up the network architecture for the
Mhm.
entire Marine Expeditionary Force. That is terrain. That is cyber terrain. That is electromagnetic spectrum terrain. That network is all maneuver terrain. But they do that, and then you have an intelligence battalion which senses and analyzes the environment from
Mhm.
a very technical perspective sometimes, or a human perspective. You have a radio battalion which does signals intelligence and electronic warfare. You have that Anglico capability I described, which delivers fires on the target. And then you have some new capabilities coming online, a defensive cyber unit, which operates in network terrain, a psychological operations unit, which influences through various forms of mediums. You have the artist formerly known as public affairs or
Mhm.
comms rally. And I was in charge of all of that. And so the question was, how do these seemingly disparate things come together and produce outcomes that people weren't even expecting? Because you just brought those groups together and go, hey, and literally, Hannah, the conversation would be a Marine from Radio Battalion, a Marine from Anglico. You can do that? Yeah, I can do this. And then you'd see him like, oh, we could deliver it this way, and so back to my heart, is for Anglico. I commanded it, one of those units as lieutenant colonel. But we provide MAGTF capabilities, to allies and partners. A lot of people think bombs from aircraft, rounds
Mhm.
from naval gunfire. What about electronic warfare capabilities? What about psychological operations capabilities that are all combined in this combined arms fashion? Deliver outcomes. So again, it was me just identifying the spaces between and how to bring those organizations together to produce outcomes that just no one is typically expecting otherwise if they continue to operate in their various silos.
Yeah, you really brought all the talent together there, breaking down the silos.
Well, it gets back to that soft truth, which I turned into
Mhm.
a white truth. Humans are in fact more important than hardware. You put brilliant Marines together in a room, they got a problem in front of them, they're just going to figure that out time and
Yeah,
time again.
yeah. So what new development around cyber or information warfare are you most excited about?
I think everything I'm seeing and use in some sense
Mhm.
in generative AI is it's like it's that two-sided coin. Ton
Mhm.
of potential, ton of opportunity, a lot to be excited about, but on the same side, boy, there's probably some concerns with that, and I'd be happy to discuss both.
Yeah.
What I mean from the opportunity and the capability is certainly that analytical perspective. Understanding what you're dealing with, and I'll even go to cyber, like one of my formative experiences, and what I found was the ability to translate my military experience into this new domain.
Mhm.
Time and time again played out. And what I mean by that is Combat Hunter was a program the Marines used in Iraq and Afghanistan. We're trying to figure out how to fight an insurgency. How do you pick out the insurgent from the population? How do you
Yeah.
find the IED before you
Yeah.
get hit by it? And so Combat Hunter was built on a community policing program
Mhm.
basis. Why are beat cops so effective? Because that cop is walking the beat every day, and
Mhm.
he or she knows who belongs or doesn't, and what was there yesterday and what wasn't. So same type of thing. You're patrolling through the village, and man, that guy just he wasn't there. It doesn't look like he fits.
Mhm.
I better go investigate that. Or that pile of trash is on the road. It wasn't there yesterday. Probably where the IED is. Hey, EOD, come on in. Help me investigate this thing. So apply that to a cybersecurity construct. Cybersecurity is basically knowing what your network is and then
Mhm.
detecting the anomaly, like, hey, something different's going on there. And you go
Mhm.
investigate it, and 9 times out of 10, it's someone's in my network who
Mhm.
shouldn't be there. So something different. So it's anomaly detection.
Yeah.
So that's what I mean about, this generative AI, about one, understanding all the data you're dealing with, and then, hey, what is not normal? What is different? So I can investigate it, and all these tools can actually lead you down to the possible issue you're dealing with, like give you ideas and even recommended solutions at speed and scale. That is super exciting. And from even a influence perspective and like content
Mhm.
generation,
Mhm.
just putting information out there. That's another one of my OA truths. Quantity is a quality all its own. In order to fight a narrative, you need to get your narrative out there, and
Mhm.
it's so hard to counter an existing perception in a population. Anyway, so that is all types of good. Conversely, think
Mhm.
about that getting pointed back at us. And if you don't mind me giving a shout out to another podcast, I think your listeners will really benefit from it. But the Phoenix Cast, two current Marines and a former Marine, that it's very cyber focused and do some phenomenal podcasts on kind of explaining current events. So when a major cyber thing happens, those guys are usually on the line within a couple days going, "Hey, this was years ago, but solar winds happened,
Mhm.
major hack, supply chain type of hack." And they were on with me days going, "Hey, this is what this means for the non kind of cyber person. Like, here's kind of what happened. Here's why it's so important, blah, blah." So they do a really good job of that. Well, a few weeks ago, they did an episode about some of these generative AI tools. And the intro to their podcast, Hannah, sounded exactly like two of the hosts, but it was completely generated
Oh, wow.
through artificial intelligence,
Mhm.
which when they brought the guest on who did that was he used all publicly accessible information. He
Mhm.
used basically like low cost resources. He had a decent
Yeah.
computer, but and some tools he may have bought
Yeah.
to put that together. But then you start thinking like, wow, think about spear phishing, like the fake emails trying to get you.
Yeah.
Now you're getting a voicemail that sounds a lot
Mhm.
like your wife, or a video call. The video content generation nowadays is
Yes.
so realistic. And so it just leads me to like think like, okay, what is the two-factor authentication model
Yeah.
for that?
Yeah.
Like, how do you be prepared for people coming after you, trying to get you to do things with these new tools?
Yeah. Yeah, we make a great point about how so much of it is low cost. Like the barrier of entry for bad actors, terrorist groups to engage on this is so low in comparison to, previous methods they used to use. I remember this was 20 years ago, but my grandmother would get these phone calls and these letters in the mail about her social security, and that was like the level of like scam awareness I was always having to have, help her navigate that. And 20 years later, my great aunt gets like deep fake videos, or like you mentioned, the voice scams where she thinks it's her daughter calling needing bail money. And this is a whole different level of threats that are coming, that two sides to the coin out of something that's also can be very good. I really appreciate your emphasis on it. Is we've got the opportunities but also the challenges, because I think people just don't think about that with AI. They either are terrified of it, and this is just a new era of human life, and they don't want anything to do with that, or it's so convenient. And I think it's just really important to have a balanced perspective on it, recognizing both, to be able to navigate this.
Yeah, and I think I'd encourage your listeners, who are probably a pretty savvy audience anyway, but I hear a lot I lead a mountain bike organization here in North
Mhm.
Carolina. We get kids on mountain bikes and it's awesome. But I use a lot of these tools just for that work, creating
Yeah.
things, and it just saves so much time. It
Yeah.
helps you do analysis. I would just, don't be afraid to use some of these new tools so you understand them. You know how they work. You kind of know what's it. I know everyone thinks Terminator right off the bat, and the machines are taking over. And sure, there's some risk there. But like I said, don't be ignorant of those things. Don't be afraid to engage with them, and so you
Mhm.
can understand them and really like, use them. And I'm somewhat disappointed when I talk to my kids. I've got two college age kids, which are a little more mature in terms of applying these tools. But my daughter, high schooler, like, hey, they talking AI, or they letting you use? Oh no. No, can't use anything. Well, okay, and I understand the concerns about cheating and all that, but I
Mhm.
think you need to learn the tools. That
Yeah.
is the future, and our kids need to know what they're getting into, and they'll just have an advantage if they know how to use the tools.
Yeah.
Those that don't.
Yeah. That's true. It's essential for navigating this world. There's no, we're not going backwards on the, okay, we overdid it on tech. Now we're going to step all the way back and, disconnect here. So navigating it is really, really essential. So how do you think technology has reshaped the way we approach security and defense?
I think like the phrase I use is speed at scale. You really have to think a little bit quicker, and it's not so from a capability perspective, gone I think are the days, or they're waning, where I identify a requirement, I submit to organization and get studied. Solutions are postured, a solution is picked, it's tested, it's developed, and then it's put out for use. It's almost the environment now. And software went down this road years ago where you literally have to develop, get it out, get an operator on it, tweak it, test it, reshape it, all with risk embedded into the model for assessing that and the like. And it has to happen a lot quicker. Technology is moving at that pace. You can't just be caught behind waiting for the perfect thing to develop. You have to get something out there, try it, use it. I hate to say disposable capabilities, but if you've paid attention to what happened recently between Ukraine and Russia with drones and deceptive tactic, and the term being used is precision mass. That is a cycle over, I've heard in some open source reports, 18 months to plan that thing. That's pretty darn quick to get a capability like that developed out there and used to, you would say, a strategic effect in the environment. So that's the environment nowadays. Folks and organizations have to think through how they do speed at scale. And certainly I think the biggest challenge there is just what is your risk model and how do you calculate and then describe risk to whoever's responsible for that risk. In the military construct, that is the commander, but that's the challenge that I dealt with in this MEF information group with new capabilities, was telling my boss, yes, sir, we can use it. Here's the risk, here's what might happen, here's what might not happen. And as you feel the capability that isn't fully tested or the Marines are fully trained, that's some of the risk, and you have to account for that in today's environment. There's no easy answers for that, other than getting back to that idea of trust, and your people, and you have a good cohesive organization where you can operate at that speed at scale.
So I guess this is kind of in line with the previous question a little bit, or your response. What skills, or mindsets do you think are essential for success, in this sector, or even just kind of in this time?
I'll channel my inner Carol Dweck and say growth mindset vice fixed mindset, right? Just back to the previous points, like, oh, AI tools are scary, I can't learn them. Well, no. You need to be willing to try new things and learn new things, and it's a marathon. It's a campaign. Constant learning. You gotta do that to kind of be in this environment, and certainly today's day and age. But I would say, and I'm certainly biased on where I come from, being a Marine, but I do believe a hacker mindset is required in today's day and age. And I think Marines are the original hackers, and I don't mean that in the strict cyber computer sense. What I mean is there's a problem in front of you. You have a set of tools that may not entirely solve the problem, but with a bit of tinkering and figuring things out, you can actually solve that problem. That's what Marines have done throughout their history, as far as I can tell. Is like they always don't get the biggest budget, they always don't get the best gear, but they're given hard missions and they figure it out. And that's what I saw in my time in Special Operations Command. When I was at Marine Special Operations Command, the Marines were new. People were trying to figure out what are they doing. Well, they did everything pretty darn well because they had a bias for action, a combined arms mentality, and they went after it. Same thing in cyber. The Marine teams there were doing really, really well because they just had this bias for action, and maybe not the most cyber savvy, although they had some great talented folks, but they just had this combined arms maneuver warfare mindset about getting after problems, bringing people together. Hey, you can exactly what I described. You can do that. Yeah, come on in. Let's do that together to get after it. So I think it's having that type of mentality that you don't just see a problem and quit. You go, hey, there's a problem here. Who do I bring in? Who can I talk to? How do I collaborate to get that problem solved?
Yeah, I think a lot of people respond in kind of an information saturated or overwhelmed environment by like craving, certainty. They want to get it perfect, or they want to know the answer that they'll get is right before they even start doing it. So I really appreciate your description of kind of how Marines have that bias for action and just tackling the problem and getting to it, not knowing how it's all going to necessarily turn out. Because I think that's just something that's really lacking. And maybe it is just kind of a human response to the information age. There's just so much more stuff than there was even 20 years ago that we contend with. It's a rapidly changing environment. As you mentioned, previously, things change at such a speed that, getting something perfect isn't even really an option, where it's constantly, it's like jumping off a cliff and building an airplane on the way down kind of scenario in a lot of these areas. So are there any resources that you found particularly useful in your career journey?
So I'll put tipping spears on my list now. But I mentioned already the Phoenix Cast podcasts, knowledgeable people in the environment domain that, is easy to incorporate into your, education or learning, pathway, right? Like I'm driving somewhere, I get to listen to tipping spears. I'm, mowing the lawn, I'll put, the Phoenix Cast in, just so easy nowadays. So I'd recommend everyone subscribe to those regular podcasts so you can stay current on what's going on. To our previous point, it's changing pretty quick. Who knew about this generative AI? I found a podcast that gave me a great like primer, like, ooh, here's something coming down the pike you need to pay attention to. So I think that's one. And then just back to the really knowledgeable people. Listen whenever they speak, and I'll give you one example that I think is still relevant today, and to a point I made previously. This was just as I was getting into the cyber field, 2016, and just coming to the fort. And someone tipped me off to a talk Rob Joyce was giving out in San Francisco at one of the hacker conferences. And this was back in 2016. But at the time, Rob Joyce was basically the National Security Agency's lead hacker, responsible for tailored access operations. And he was giving a talk, Hannah, get this, how we do our job, like public open forum. And you're like, whoa, whoa, whoa. Like I gotta listen to this thing. And so he gives a talk and he goes, I'm gonna tell you two things of how we do our job. The hackers, some of the nation's elite hackers. Number one, I know your network better than you do. So the hackers just study, they analyze, like what's part of the network, back to the point, like, do you understand yourself? Do you understand your terrain, so to speak? And then step two, we wait. We wait for you, human, to make a mistake. Don't update your password. Don't apply the patch. Don't do something human, still frail, still weak, still, whatever, fill in your, we'll make mistakes. That describes an advanced persistent threat. And so I still recommend that talk to people like, hey, I want to get in the cyber field. What's it all about? Listen to that. That's some knowledge and experience, and it's absolutely true. Do you know what you're dealing with? And then how are you limiting the human proclivity to be lazy, to make a mistake, and the like? So, hey, new cybersecurity professional responsible for this organization's information security. That's what you're up against. Here you go. So yeah, find those knowledgeable people, find the outlet that works for you. Books might be it for some people, but podcasts are just, for me, they're just so easy nowadays. So thank you, Hannah, for setting this one up, and just another resource for folks to stay knowledgeable in this field.
Yeah, no, that's great. I like podcasts. I can do it while I do my garden or walk or run. It's kind of on the go. So looking forward, what developments are you most hopeful about in terms of the future of national security?
I think in the realm of education and training, if I just put
Mhm,
my former military hat on about how I was trained, very industrial age model of kind
mhm,
of this step to this step and your classroom and read this book and then apply. And it seems to me back to this idea that, campaign of learning lifelong, like
mhm,
so easy nowadays.
mhm,
Access to information online. We just mentioned podcasts, is that it's so easy. And I think education training gets better for our
mhm,
Marines or our other national security professionals who are motivated. These are
mhm,
patriots. They are putting their hand in the air to serve their country, and they want to do the best job they can. They will seek out meritorious promotion. They'll do all those things. That's my history in the Marine Corps. Those Marines are just they're trying to do their best, and now they're just really equipped to be as knowledgeable and as proficient
mhm,
on their trade, on their nation, and the like. So I think that's what excites me about the future and this technology we talked about is that it enables the human. It enables the strategic advantage this nation has is the creativity, the wherewithal of that young man or woman who's signing up to serve their country. That's what's exciting to me.
Yeah, I think so many folks are concerned, technology is going to replace the human, which is one of the fears. So I appreciate your emphasis on how it enables the human, and becoming cyber capable through continuous learning can certainly help us in that mission for sure.
Yeah, I won't make any predictions about when the Ray Kurzweil singularity happens, and it's all one human and machine. But I think there are still distinct human qualities that are applied in whatever your domain is, and the technology right now is enabling us to do that. And just new human endeavors will get created from us not having to do the mundane
Right.
anymore. That seems to be the broad thrust of technology over our history as mankind. But
Yeah.
are there dangers? Yes, but I see more opportunities right now than the dangers.
So any final words of advice for the audience today?
I think I'd go back to my previous point about stay engaged in the domain or environment through uh, you know platforms like this, Tipping Spears. Stay knowledgeable, engage in the tools, engage in the technology, so you understand them and can speak intelligently about them, not fearmonger. I see so much of that out there.
Yeah.
Nowadays with I think a lack of understanding of what the capabilities, limitations of the tools are. So that'd be my advice. Stay engaged, stay up to speed. It's easy to do. To my point, you can fit it within your day. And I think you're a better, even beyond the national security construct, you are a better citizen being informed about what's going on in the modern information environment. And oh boy, Hannah, we won't go political here in this podcast, but then the information environment is dynamic right now in this nation. It is dynamic. And do you really understand where your information is coming from, what echo chamber you may or may not be in, and the like? That is worthy to figure out. That is worthy to ask about and figure out, just to be, again, the best informed citizen you can be.
That's great advice, Brian. Well, thank you so much for sharing your insights with us today. Your contributions to our nation have impacted so many, and I really appreciate you coming on the podcast today and telling us about your career journey, and then also your actionable insights related to the information environment we're all living in.
And I really appreciate it. It is, in fact, a nation worth fighting for. We have our warts, we have our problems, but I can speak with some authority, having been deployed around this planet to not so nice places. That is the best thing going. And so, fight for it, people. Be informed, be knowledgeable, and get out there and do your part. So thanks for having me on, Hannah. Great time today. Thank you so much.
And to our listeners, thank you for tuning in to this episode of Tipping Spears with Hannah Becker. We hope this conversation has sparked new ideas and challenged the way you think. Don't forget to subscribe to the podcast, and we'll catch you next time with another exciting guest.